All right, so we got the world's deadliest company. Let's check it out, bro.
China, 1982. The economy is in shambles. After years of communist upheaval under Mao Zedong, most people live on less than $1 a day. Now a new leader is trying to modernize one of the country's most important industries. His government founds a company that becomes known as CNTC STMA. You've probably never heard of it, but their product kills up to 2.4 million people every year.
Whoa.
A number that will likely soar in the next few decades, unless something changes, which seems unlikely. There's far too much money at stake. Selling cigarettes.
What?
CNTC STMA is likely one of the most profitable companies in the world, by far. But you won't find it on any Fortune 500 list. Why is that?
Really?
Where is all this profit flowing? This is the story of a broken system, a look into a core part of Chinese state economics, and at the devastating effects of a state-sponsored public health crisis.
Bro, this animation looks so nice. Alright. God. Holy cinema,
This
bro.
video was produced in collaboration with journalists from The Examination and is based on their phenomenal original reporting. You'll find links in the description.
Okay.
Durham, North Carolina, 1880. This is the American tobacco tycoon James B. Duke. He's just been informed that the automatic cigarette machine is finally ready. Cigarettes are pretty niche around this time. Tobacco is usually smoked with a pipe or just chewed.
Okay.
Companies still have workers roll cigarettes by hand at a rate of about 4 cigarettes per minute. But this long-awaited machine can roll 210 cigarettes per minute. It'll make James Duke cartoonishly rich, and it plays a big role in hooking millions on tobacco. When Duke hears the
Now-
good news, the first thing he says is,
Is this a W man or L man? Honestly, that's a pretty L man, I'm not gonna lie.
"Bring me the Atlas." Duke's never been to China, and he'll never visit either. All he cares about is that it has 430 million people.
That's
At
crazy.
the time, it's the most populated country on Earth. That is where we're going to sell cigarettes, he says. He's told that Chinese people don't smoke cigarettes, but he isn't worried. They can learn,
Bro, that's crazy.
and he's right. His company, British American Tobacco, will become enormously successful in China. At the time, not many American businesses make money on Chinese soil.
True.
British American cigarettes catch on like wildfire. Within a few short years, China is buying billions per year. Chinese tobacco companies can't keep up. British American Tobacco squeezes out more than 20 Chinese cigarette companies and goes on to dominate the market for 50 years. Then the communists take power in 1949.
Oh god,
By
communism.
then, China's love of tobacco runs deep. Smoking has become a big part of Chinese culture. Chairman Mao is in a tour.
Dude, it's crazy how one man got a whole country addicted to cigarettes. I'm not gonna lie.
Is chain smoker. He famously favors
That's
British
pretty
American
crazy.
Tobacco's State Express 555s. He'll later switch to a domestic brand packaged in patriotic red, embossed with the gate of the Heavenly Palace. Mao's doctor once advised him to quit, but he waved it off and said, "Smoking is also a form of deep breathing exercise."
Really?
And during the Communist Revolution, Mao knows just how to rally his troops. He promises them
Cigarettes?
food, shelter, and cigarettes.
That's crazy.
A promise he'll fulfill. Tobacco first reached China in the 17th century.
I was gonna say, humans always were smoking this, bro.
Qing dynasty emperors tried to ban the drug. They threatened to behead anyone caught smoking.
Damn,
But
W.
people kept puffing away anyway.
That's crazy.
So instead, Qing rulers tried to get a monopoly on tobacco, so that only they could use it for diplomatic purposes. Having failed at that, they eventually allowed the people to cultivate and smoke tobacco, and just taxed it. That
Bruh.
brought in tons of money for the imperial court and
Classic.
created a livelihood for millions. In other words, China's been a nation of tobacco lovers for a long time. But smoking habits reach a whole new level after the Communist Revolution, when the new regime successfully nationalizes the tobacco industry. All foreign tobacco companies are banned. Mao places all the
Wow.
remaining private companies under government control, and his successor, Deng Xiaoping, also a chain smoker, consolidates those companies into one state-controlled monopoly. By 1996, 4 decades after the revolution, China is smoking 4 times as many cigarettes,
God, bro.
a
Nah.
number that's been growing almost continuously ever since.
I mean,
Speaking
wait.
of
It kind of makes sense since there's a lot more people in China, though. So I don't think it's,
growing numbers, more and more people choose Udu to grow their business.
Oh my God,
50
bro.
Tory talks to all goes on. That's the app today. Just 9 visit.
All right, bro. Lock
Today,
in.
every 5th person in China smokes. Over
God.
300 million people. And tobacco.
I'm not gonna lie. I feel like smoking, like cigarettes in general, is just like kind of dying down a little bit, which is W. But what's replacing that is vapes and stuff like that.
is the country's most socially sanctioned addiction. Fancy cigarettes are a go-to gift for formal occasions. When you travel, people expect that you bring home cigarettes from your destination.
What?
And if someone offers you a cigarette, a lot of people would judge you if you turned it down.
Well, I'm not
It's still
taking it.
common
Like
for
what?
doctors and high-profile politicians to smoke. China has about 1/5 the world's population, but buys nearly half of the world's cigarettes,
God.
about 2.4 trillion per year. Stacked on top of each other, this year's worth of Chinese cigarettes would reach from your house to the sun, with a few million
Bro.
kilometers to spare. And nearly all of the cigarettes they buy are produced and sold by one company. CNTC STMA, also known as China Tobacco, is the world's largest cigarette manufacturer.
Each year, they make more than 4 times as many cigarettes as the next biggest tobacco company, which is Philip Morris, the people who make Marlboro. It's also 100% owned by the Chinese government.
Here's the thing. I do not think the Chinese have what is it? I don't think they have their hands on vapes. If they did, they'd be going crazy. I'm not gonna
And
lie.
it's part of this super ministry within the Chinese government called the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology.
This is Jason McClure, a journalist who has investigated China Tobacco for years.
China Tobacco is a legal monopoly in China, and it
That's
has
crazy.
19 different cigarette-making subsidiaries.
It's authorized to control all aspects of production and distribution, from plantation to manufacture to import and export.
Together, they control more than 97% of China's cigarette market.
Well,
This
goddamn.
powerful monopoly funneled over $223 billion in profits and taxes into the Chinese treasury in 2024. That's almost $100 billion more than Apple's total profit before taxes in that year.
Bro.
And all of this money flows directly to the government. The biggest tobacco company in the world is the Chinese government. One
God.
part of it, at least. Which means that the more the Chinese population smokes, the richer the state becomes. In fact,
That's
China
kind of crazy to think about. I'm not gonna lie.
receives more
El
money from
communism?
tobacco than Saudi Arabia does from oil.
So in 2023, it was somewhere between 6 and 7%
Oh,
of
God.
the central government of China's
Really?
revenue came from China
You had to do
Tobacco's
that, bro.
profits or taxes paid by China Tobacco. Now, to put that in context, that's about the equivalent of China's entire defense budget in 2023.
In other words, China could finance their vast military with cigarettes. Inside the country, this isn't exactly a secret. Chinese smokers often joke about it. When they light up, they'll say they're helping the country build warships. Every puff is patriotic.
Really?
But China Tobacco
Dude.
isn't just the producer of cigarettes. It's also the country's tobacco regulator. Officially, it's also supposed to get the country's smoking habit under control.
The tobacco executives are literally inside the room where the decisions are being made
Nah.
about tobacco control and about public health policy. When it comes to the size and the display of cigarette warning labels, when it comes to whether or not cities should ban
So if they have a monopoly on them, right? On the cigarettes, my mic. I don't know what's going on with it. They're able to manipulate the packaging as much, so they could just say no nicotine. This is totally good for you. Like, that's crazy to think about.
smoking in restaurants or public places. China Tobacco is able to be in the room where the decisions are made. And the money,
That's
the
crazy,
$200 billion
bro.
a year that the government receives in revenue from the company, explains their influence.
Tobacco makes so much money, the government has fewer reasons to crack down on it the way it might other dangerous consumer products.
Damn.
All this presents a huge conflict of interest. Kind of like if your meth dealer were also your doctor and a DEA agent.
Wait, yeah, like that just means the government just straight up doesn't care about you. Like,
and here's where things get mind-boggling.
Okay, so if you're from China, right? And if you're watching this, let me know if this is like a true thing. Like, is this actually happening?
Not only is China Tobacco one of the biggest and most profitable companies in the world,
I guess they wouldn't be watching, but
it's the deadliest.
You know,
the World Health Organization
you never know.
Other researchers
they could use a VPN, right?
Try to measure how much sickness and death each year is caused by economic activity, often by legal companies doing business in ways that happen to sicken or kill people over time. In many countries, there's a huge spike in deaths from diabetes and heart attacks linked to obesity.
True.
This is a direct result of people consuming more sugary drinks and eating more ultra-processed food, often marketed and sold by large corporations. Drinking alcohol is linked to 2.6 million early deaths around the world each year from things like cancer, liver disease, and traffic accidents.
Damn.
The WHO calls these the commercial determinants of health. Tobacco is one of the biggest of these, and it kills 7 million people every year. In most cases, trying to figure out how much responsibility an individual company bears for these early deaths is super complicated, if not impossible. Think of the pollution from burning coal. You can't just point your finger at one company. Some pollution in your hometown might come from a power plant down the road, but some might come from...
All right, buddy. Time to debunk this, brother. Because for someone that has a degree in this type of stuff, I don't think you want to go there. All right, let's backtrack.
Some pollution in...
By the way, if you're watching on YouTube, you could just skip this part because...
Think of the pollution from burning coal.
Burning coal. Okay, so I don't think we've ever burnt coal in the last like 30 years, maybe. I could be wrong, but at least from what I know, the pollution amount for oil and gas industries, at least for where I live, is a tiny bit, because if they go over a certain amount, bro, they get fined by what's called the EPA, Environmental Protection EPA agency. Yeah. EPA pretty much regulates how much I guess a plant or an industrial site, oil and gas, for example, can burn off excess materials through what's called a flare system. So yeah, that's just kind of wrong.
You can't just
here.
point your finger at one company. Some pollution in your hometown might come from a power plant down the road.
And power plants, they wouldn't have coal, technically.
But some might come from steel factories.
It'd be steam.
Hundreds of kilometers away. Assessing China Tobacco's responsibility in causing deaths is much simpler. The company is vertically integrated, meaning it controls most of the steps involved in turning a tobacco leaf into...
By the way, this is not like, oh, I know a lot. This is just like informing information.
Cigarette.
Spread awareness.
And since it's a legal monopoly...
Because I feel like there's a lot of people who are very not informed and this stuff that I actually went to school.
It's made and sold almost every cigarette consumed
and worked in, so
it has for decades. The WHO uses data from a study called the Global Burden of Disease to help estimate the causes of illness and death all over the world. Their work estimates that between 1990 and 2023, there were 68 million tobacco-related deaths in China, and anything tobacco-related is somehow involved with China Tobacco and its predecessors. Even the study's most conservative estimate, 59 million deaths, is so high that there's no way to conjure up another single fossil fuel, food, or alcohol company remotely responsible for that much death.
That's crazy.
Every year, 2.5 million Chinese citizens die from tobacco, and the number is only expected to increase, not least because of China Tobacco's sales tactics. Like other tobacco companies, it seeks to convert young people into lifetime customers.
That's crazy.
One of the more significant tobacco control measures that has been undertaken by China in the last 10 years was that Xi Jinping did decree that government officials should no longer smoke in public or smoke on television.
That's,
now, among young people, especially in this more cosmopolitan cities like Beijing or Shenzhen, Shanghai. Vaping, e-cigarettes.
That's what I said, bro. That's what I said. Vaping is taking over.
Other types of
The
nicotine
youth,
products
pretty much.
are becoming more popular. And this is a challenge for China Tobacco for the state cigarette monopoly, because overwhelmingly those products are made by Chinese private companies and not by the state cigarette company. So one of the interesting aspects of China Tobacco, not just being the country's sole cigarette maker, but its tobacco regulator, is that it in turn gets to regulate e-cigarettes and other nicotine products. Now, as you might expect, they've done so in a way that favors their own cigarette business. For instance, if you want to have a lemon or mint flavored cigarette, those are banned in a lot of countries, but not in China.
Classic.
However, if you want to have a lemon or mint flavored vape, that's been banned by China Tobacco. They've said you're not allowed to sell those here. And the reason that we're doing that is because flavors like that attract children.
Bro.
The number of Chinese people with lung cancer and heart disease is only growing. It's a state-sponsored public health crisis. A crisis that will cost the country in the long run, but not the state. That's because China's basic health insurance plans only cover a fraction of the cost of treating diseases like lung cancer.
The health
God, bro.
costs of smoking will have wide ramifications on Chinese society and on the Chinese people, but they won't hit the government's purse in the same way that it has in the West.
Good evening. Remember the date, the 20th of June, 1997. It was on this day that the attorneys general of more than 40 states said in Washington that they had finally beaten the tobacco industry into submission.
Damn.
If you look back at one of the most important moments in the history of tobacco.
Wait, but here's the thing though. If you don't want to smoke, just don't smoke, right? Like if you're actually like a Chinese citizen, and they're forcing all this on you, and it's like tradition technically. If you don't want to smoke, just don't smoke. But you know, hindsight 2020, you know smoking's bad, but even though they know smoking's bad, they still do it. So it's just all like personal preference technically.
Brought against the tobacco companies, not by the US federal government, but by state attorney generals who banded together to sue the tobacco companies.
We had to punish this industry in such a way that everybody in this country and everybody in this world would recognize that they had paid a higher price than any other corporation in history.
And the reason state attorney generals sued them is because the state governments were being bankrupted by the health costs of paying for their citizens' health care, who were having long, difficult deaths, essentially, that were very expensive and involved lots of medical care. In China, that's not the case. And so there's no sort of functional financial driver for tobacco control in the same way that there has been in some other countries.
Come to where the flavor is. Come to Marlboro country.
You know, I never had a cigarette ever in my life, brother.
Up until the end of the 20th century, big tobacco seems unstoppable in the West thanks to mass production of cigarettes and aggressive advertising. Worldwide, cigarettes are associated with glamour, freedom, modernity. Movie stars, athletes, and even doctors are often seen endorsing tobacco.
Try Camels yourself.
Dude, that's crazy, bro.
So many doctors enjoy.
Until the health consequences become undeniable.
Yeah, they didn't even know that it was bad for them, bro.
In 1964,
that's kind of crazy.
the Surgeon General's report declares that smoking is linked with lung cancer, a fact that big tobacco had been trying to cover up and discredit for years.
Dude, and the fact that they knew, bro. They knew this shit, bro. That's crazy.
The landmark report led to Congress requiring warning labels printed on cigarette packaging. And in the decades since, more and more countries have passed more and more anti-smoking measures. In the United States and other countries, high taxes on tobacco and public awareness of its health hazards led to dramatic shifts in attitudes towards smoking and a steady global decrease in consumption. Now, you see more and more countries implementing public smoking bans.
If you can't smoke in a restaurant, if you can't smoke in a bar, if you can't smoke in a cafe, all of a sudden, your friends are inside having a good time, eating, drinking. If you're the smoker, you're outside by yourself on a street corner. And effectively, it becomes a habit that's no longer culturally or socially acceptable. And that's what we've seen in many countries around the world. But what happened in China is different. China did not fulfill that commitment to pass a
Yeah.
smoking ban in public places.
They can smoke anyway,
In
right?
2016 and 2017, Xi Jinping tried, and effectively, it was stopped by China Tobacco.
Wait, what?
What we saw in the years after that was a number of Chinese cities passing their own smoking bans. But we saw that China Tobacco, by 2022, 2023, had swung into action to stop smoking bans at a municipal level.
Yo.
In the last 20 years, the rest of the world is
So the owner of China, Xi Jinping, right? He basically tried to stop that, and then having another company go and say like, yeah, nah, fuck that. Like, nah. That's crazy, bro.
managed to reduce the adult smoking rate from
Yeah, I feel like
34%
my mind
to
is
23%.
expanding from this
If
information,
China
bro.
had followed the global downward trend, there'd be about 80 million fewer
That's why I
people
love
addicted to
Fern, bro.
tobacco
W
now.
Fern.
And China did pledge to adopt the same anti-smoking measures that successfully led
They
other
really
countries
said,
to
"Fuck
reduce
you, bro."
consumption so dramatically, along with 167 other countries. In 2005, China signed the same major WHO treaty aimed at controlling tobacco internationally. It vowed to protect its citizens from the vested interests of the tobacco industry.
Brother.
This treaty was significant globally. And since it was signed, tobacco use rates around the world have declined significantly in India, in Brazil, in the United States, in Western Europe, and Latin America. Rates have just plunged. In China, they've barely budged.
That's
Most
crazy.
efforts have systematically been bulldozed by China Tobacco. China Tobacco found sneaky ways to get past the commitments of the WHO treaty. For instance, they were involved in the translation of the treaty into Chinese and made sure the language was weaker than in the original.
Really?
Another way they undermined the treaty is through warning labels on cigarette packages. This was one of the key points that China agreed to when signing the treaty. The warning labels were supposed to be large and hard-hitting, but China
Wait,
Tobacco
this is what I said.
managed to overturn these
Bro,
decisions. In China, the labels are much softer and easier to miss.
That's what I said. No, no.
These are Zhonghanhai cigarettes, produced by Shanghai Tobacco, a major subsidiary
Shanghai?
of China Tobacco.
I actually want to go to Shanghai.
So if you look at the
Shanghai
Chinese
looks
cigarette
cool.
warning labels today, you'll notice it's just a text warning label and it blends in very nicely with the rest of the packaging. The content of the warning label said-
I can't read. I don't even know what the warning label is. If I had to guess, maybe it's the gold Chinese letters, but it could be the little swoosh.
smoking is harmful to health, which is a very generic
Oh.
way of warning people about the health consequences of smoking.
Zhongnanhai cigarettes were smoked by the characters on a popular TV show called Struggle, kind of like a Chinese
Struggle.
version of Friends.
Hmm.
Around 2007, it became the go-to cigarette for young people living in big cities.
Damn.
Now that Struggle's original audience is no longer so young, Shanghai Tobacco has launched a new line of Zhongnanhai.
Black
The rebrand
8?
is meant to entice the next generation of smokers, younger millennials and Gen Z.
Really?
Some Chinese cigarette brands are especially beautiful. There's the Changhua brand favored by Mao, still considered a premium cigarette. Apparently, the smoke tastes a bit like preserved plums. Other brands also use elegant packaging with patriotic imagery. China Super Slims look like Chinese porcelain.
What the hell?
Shengmao China has the giant
That one looks cool, I'm not gonna lie.
panda as a mascot. And Double Happiness is associated with Chinese weddings.
Oh.
All these brands are owned by China Tobacco.
Now, if we're to contrast that with these cigarettes that I bought in Vietnam, Vietnam also signed on to the same WHO treaty. But
Okay,
when
let's
they designed
see.
their
Oh
cigarette
my god, what is that? What is that?
packages, half the space on the front of the package is a graphic warning label showing a diseased body part.
Yo.
The warning label itself specifically warns you that smoking causes heart disease. And we know from research that when you warn people about a specific health
Dude, Vietnam Vietnam took that to the extreme, brother. That is
problem,
crazy.
they're much more likely to pay attention than if you just tell them something generic.
True.
Smoking is harmful to health.
True.
Some countries go even further.
Brother.
This is plain tobacco packaging, a tobacco control strategy implemented by more
Smoking causes mouth cancer. Yeah. Smoking causes blindness.
In
Yeah.
more countries, including the UK,
Quitting will improve your health. W.
France, Canada, and Australia. Cigarettes packaged without logos, just
Smoking doubles your risk of stroke.
graphic
Yep.
health warnings and the official ugliest color in the world. The goal is to prevent
Ew.
teenagers from picking up smoking. Young people are particularly
Okay, bro. Smoking causes lung cancer, obviously. Yeah. But, bro.
susceptible to flashy, attractive
what?
tobacco packaging. Plenty of research suggests that plain
Wait, why don't we have this in the US?
tobacco packaging helps prevent smoking. Australia credits the ugly packages with getting 100,000 smokers to quit within just 1 year.
W. Actual W.
In contrast,
But the thing is, like, the US is so big, I feel like people won't quit unless they're switching onto, vapes and zero nicotine vapes and stuff.
China doesn't even
Which
require pictorial health warnings.
So far, I think is pretty safe, right?
Not only that, but Chinese cigarette packages often feature
Except for the popcorn lung, yeah.
a
But
deceptive marketing strategy,
we don't know,
an
bro.
advertising
We don't
technique
know.
based on pseudoscience that other countries banned long ago. The packages will often display the precise tar content of a certain line of cigarettes. The idea is to highlight if a cigarette is low tar, to seem like it's a healthier choice than higher tar cigarettes.
Really?
But low tar cigarettes aren't actually less harmful. When Western tobacco companies pushed low tar cigarettes in the 20th century, lung cancer rates rose.
Classic.
And this is one of the most interesting and deadly marketing frauds in all of human history.
Latest U.S. government figures show Silver Thin's lowest in tar and nicotine of all 100s tested.
Bruh.
The supposed benefits of low tar cigarettes have been debunked. But for those who don't know it's junk science, low tar
Dude, tar is literally like gunk, brother. Like what?
branding sounds
I
pretty
wouldn't
good.
want any tar, bruh.
Smokers concerned about their health but not quite ready to quit will often assume low tar cigarettes are a safer choice. Especially perhaps in China, where cigarettes are still allowed to be advertised with safe-sounding words like light, low, smooth, or mild. Words that other
Really?
countries have either banned or heavily regulated. In China, 20% of all cigarettes sold are low tar, and that number is on the rise. China Tobacco keeps finding ways to obstruct prohibitions on advertising, proposals to raise taxes, and other tobacco reforms.
China Tobacco
Brother, raising the taxes is crazy, bro.
has used its
Really?
might, its political power within the Chinese government to block a whole range of tobacco control and public health measures that researchers have known for years are effective at stopping smoking.
But how does the company exercise so much power?
Yeah.
This is a vast company with offices in every city and town of any significance all across the country. So literally, they have built-in lobbyists there. The head of China Tobacco is one of the 50 most important officials in the
Bro,
Chinese Communist
he
Party.
is beyond
so the political
rich,
power,
bro.
the breadth and depth of the company's political power was used to effectively not just stop smoking bans on the national level, but even in little cities and towns around the country.
You see this failure to regulate smoking play out on a cultural level.
There's packs of cigarettes laying at the gym.
There's a guy smoking in the elevator.
The warning
Nah.
labels were written
You're
in
cooked.
English, which is as bizarre in China as it would be for the warning labels in Canada to be written in China.
Wait. What? You have to learn a whole nother language just to read your... Nah, brother, that's cooked. Brother, smoking is harmful for your health. Quit smoking early is good. Quit smoking early is good for your health. And that's a Chinese...
In China, as it would be for
Brother.
the warning labels in Canada to be written in Chinese.
50-year-old Chinese man runs marathons, smoking 42 cigarettes.
That's crazy.
Many Chinese people consider it a lost cause to even try.
100 cigarettes.
This is against the law. This is China.
Over the last 60 years, global
okay.
smoking rates have mostly fallen. Taxes, warnings, and bans worked. And the 2005 WHO treaty is credited with being crucial in curbing big tobacco's power. Not in China.
Damn. Well, GG, bro.
So, can anything be done? Or are the health consequences unavoidable if a state is financially dependent on a deadly industry?
Yeah, you're
State
cooked.
involvement in the tobacco industry doesn't necessarily mean that smoking rates will remain high or that tobacco control policies will be undermined. There are more than a dozen other countries around the world where the government still owns a major stake in a tobacco company. And there are plenty of countries where the tobacco industry is entirely in private hands that have smoking rates that are higher than China. That includes Indonesia, Turkey, and some others. So there's nothing inherently wrong with the government having a role in the tobacco industry. It's just that in China, the government hasn't managed the conflicts of interest that come with being in the tobacco business and also being in charge of public health as well as they could have. In other countries, in Thailand, for example, smoking rates have dropped dramatically over the last 20 years, even though the government is one of the largest cigarette makers there.
True.
So clearly, there are ways that China's state ownership of a cigarette company could be accommodated, but China just hasn't done the work to implement this. And now, because the company is so large and so powerful and makes so much money, making those changes has become very, very difficult.
And the company isn't done growing.
China Tobacco would like to sell more cigarettes overseas, and its exports have been increasing. It has investments in tobacco companies or joint ventures in a number of other countries, primarily in Asia. China is investing more in Africa and
it's in the United States, brother.
Other places. China Tobacco is looking to follow suit, to sell cigarettes in new places, develop markets, and also to buy tobacco leaf from other companies.
Oh, no.
So I think in the future, we'll see that it is becoming an increasingly global company.
China Tobacco already exports their products to 125 countries on 5 continents. Pushing its cigarettes onto other nations is part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, their global infrastructure expansion. And it isn't always legal. In countries with no legal market for their cigarettes, China Tobacco operates through a convoluted network of subsidiaries. They hide behind shell companies and often work with smugglers to flood countries with their products.
Really? China, what are y'all on, bruh?
Still, the main market is domestic. China Tobacco
that's
takes
just
great
weird,
pains
bro.
to gain favor with the public by investing in social products, like sponsoring elementary schools in rural, low-income provinces.
That's crazy.
More than 100 tobacco schools are said to exist. Some are explicitly named after cigarette brands. It's like sending your kid to Lucky Strike Elementary. Some even have signs on the walls that say, "Genius is from hard work, tobacco helps you excel."
Just
Plenty of people in China are outraged by this and other predatory practices of the tobacco industry.
That's so predatory. Bro, what?
But lately,
dude, just give the cigarettes to the kids. You know, matter of fact, any age can smoke. Bang.
It's become
like
even
that's
harder
just brain
to
dead,
combat
brother.
China Tobacco's influence.
By the way, don't clip that, bro.
Starting around 2017, 2018, things started to change. And they didn't just change around tobacco control. China started to become a much more authoritarian place.
Crazy, bro.
Xi Jinping, as we know, ended the tradition of staying in power for only 2 terms. And
that's
a whole
crazy.
array of sort of civil society functions began to disappear in China, and civil society groups and advocacy groups that were once tolerated, all of a sudden were no longer tolerated. And interestingly, that even happened in tobacco control, an area that you would think is absolutely non-political. And so where previously you had lawyers taking China Tobacco to court, you had tobacco control groups being very outspoken in the press and in public forums about the company's harmful role in Chinese society, all of a sudden they're silenced. And that is a direct consequence of the rising authoritarianism in China that's taken place over the last 7-8 years.
Well, given all of that, do you see any realistic path for reducing smoking in China?
No.
China's government has become so centralized that the one person who could have a significant impact on China's smoking rate,
Xi Jinping, brother. If he can hear us, please ban smoking.
right now, is only Xi Jinping. However,
Bang.
I think over the course of time, in the years and decades to come, as China opens up more to the world, as its population becomes more educated, and as habits change, I think fewer and fewer young people will be smokers in the future. And so I think there is some reason for optimism that 20 years from now, 30 years from now, smoking will be much less of an issue. in China. The problem is that in the short to medium term, the outlook doesn't look very bright, and there aren't effectively civil society organizations or other checks on the power of this company within China.
Okay. W video, bro. What? That's crazy, bro. Honestly, W video. W Fern, bro. I love Fern so much, bro. Let's keep it rolling now.